Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Private detectives of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment where you had to either stop watching or step in or call the police? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Saw a heated argument between a man and a woman in a car behind me. I was literally about to say, ooh, trouble in paradise, when he started smashing her in their face with his fist. I guess there's not a lot of private detectives on Reddit then. Either that or they're all working on Christmas. My ex-sister-in-law was murdered by her husband, beaten to death. He fled the state when he realized they were going to arrest him. Shocker. The very moment the warrant came in, I started a concentrated search for him. With the help of social media, friends and family of his, 3 separate police forces in 2 different states, and some damn good luck, they found him 14 hours later. He was in the middle of a state park camping in a tent. One of the cops I spoke to during the search actually had me on the line while he was staking out a trailer park. He was so excited, there were like 4 cops on the entire force, and this was the most interesting thing he'd seen on the job. Murderer got 15 years, and I'm a little worried he might be pissed when he gets out, but I'd still do the same thing again. It was by far the coolest thing I've ever done. Edit. Ex-sister-in-law, in this situation, my ex-husband's sister, and my bestie from before I met her brother. Called the cops on like the drunkest driver ever. We followed the driver around as he went in circles for a while. The cops eventually caught up to us and arrested the guy when he stopped at a gas station to puke his guts out in the parking lot. Joke's on the cops, I guess, because Mr. Drunk ended up puking in their back seat. I can't promise that Mr. Drunk would have killed somebody if he hadn't gotten arrested, but I'd like to think I made a small contribution to society's overall well-being that night. TLDR. Don't drive drunk, kids. Obligatory, not me, but a coworker tag. When I worked security, we had mobile guards who would come and do relief for us. One night, my relief was late, so I called in and dispatch told me to hang tight, as they were occupied and would be there when they got there. I'm pretty easy, and it was a chill shift, so I said, okay, no rush, as long as they're okay. And dispatch chuckled and said, you're in for a hell of a story when they get there. So an hour and a half later, relief shows up with the coffee as an apology for me being late, no biggie, but I appreciate wake-up juice. She tells me the story. She was doing a routine check on a business we monitored when she noticed 2 guys trying to cut the lock with a cutting torch. She called the cops, and while she was on the phone with police dispatch, there was an explosion. The business was a mechanic, and I guess there was a small fuel leak from a car in the shop, and the sparks from the torch lit and blew the door off its hinges and set the place on fire briefly. Guys were tossed like 20 feet, slowly scrambled to their vehicle and took off. She got the description out to the police, who later caught them at the hospital where they attended for burns they received. Fortunately, there was minimal damage to the business. Nothing caught majorly on fire, and she was able to put out the small fire with a fire extinguisher. Didn't make more than a small blurb in the news, but it was a hell of a story. I'm not a private detective, neither am I, but one day I saw a drunk, possible homeless guy start swinging a machete at random lady in a crosswalk. This was at like 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday. Was ready to step in, but also called police. The cop showed up and arrested the guy. He hasn't been on his usual corner since then. I lived in a building where a neighbor had an alarm she could ring if she was having a medical emergency. It went off 3 times one night, and each time I opened my door to see a dozen of my other neighbors standing around her door knocking and asking if she needed help, so I assumed she would get the help she needed. After the 4th time, I was like, WTF, and I called 911. They told me nobody had called them yet. All those effing bystanders, and nobody called 911. The ambulance came in like 5 minutes after that, and that call may have saved her life. Years ago, I lived in a pretty dangerous part of the city. Normally you don't get involved and call the cops because those people may come after you. I've seen some wild things. The one time I actually had to call the cops is when I was in my backyard and a person plopped out of the neighbor's window into my backyard. It was a grown man, and his hands, feet, knees, and mouth were taped up. My first thought was, is this a trick? He was a big guy. I got closer and asked him if he was okay. Of course he couldn't answer, so I ripped the tape off. Then the screaming started. I couldn't understand what he was saying. I ran inside and got scissors and cut the tape open so he was free. What I could understand was that he was held captive for 3 days and beaten. I believe it was a drug deal gone bad. Anyways, I knew I needed to call the cops, but my boyfriend at the time smoked a ton of weed, so there was weed everywhere in the house. If I called the cops and they came in, I would get arrested. So we waited on my porch. Cops came within minutes of calling, and as we're talking to the cops, the guys who held the other guy captive drove by and saw us. Then a police chase starts. I'm then again left alone with this man. He's starting to get irate, and the dude is probably 6'3" and 200 plus pounds. I'm 5'5" and 130 pounds at the time. I keep calling my then boyfriend, and he sends me to voicemail. Ugh. I try and calm the guy down best I can. I get him a drink and some snacks while we hide out on the porch. Police finally come back empty-handed and talk to the guy while the paramedics check him out. Next thing I know, he's being handcuffed and arrested. I asked one of the cops why, and he told me he had a warrant out for his arrest. So they arrest the guy who was kidnapped and don't bother to continue to look for the other guys. After finally thinking I can go back in my house and hide out, a detective shows up and wants to take photos. He wants to come in the house. I convince him my dog is really mean and will bite him. He keeps telling me how much he likes dogs and he thinks he will be fine. I refuse to let him in. We go around back. There was no need for him to come in the house anyways. They take their photos and question me for the 100th time and finally leave. Before leaving, they suggest I move. And one cop gives me his cell phone number in case I get scared. At the time, I thought that was nice, but now that seems weird. My boyfriend finally shows up as the police are leaving, and his first question is about the weed. Dump him. Did they see it? Did I let them in? Not, are you okay, or what happened? Then he got mad. He had to leave whatever he was doing and left me home alone again. I was terrified that the people next door who saw me call the cops would be after me. I mean, I probably ruined whatever drug house they had over there. They showed up that night and grabbed their stuff and never came back. Wild time of my life. Oh, I dumped that asshole and moved to a better part of town. Good for you. Obligatory, not a PI, but I was heading to work and had just got on the metro. I saw another guy looking like a homeless guy get on at the same station. He sat down next to another passenger, let his coat lay in the middle of the floor, and he was so zonked out that he started fiddling with small plastic bags of stuff, a water bottle and a medical needle, right as he sat in the middle of other passengers. It was at this point the passenger sitting next to him got up and walked away, and I started the Public Transport Authority's app on my phone and started chatting with their security service. I sure as hell would not call and risk the guy hearing me being reported and getting pissed off. Told them that a guy was fiddling with plastic bags and a needle. Gave them the location, as well as the type of train, as it was a new model with few trains in service, and told them that someone should come out and check on him. At the next stop, 2 security guards picked him up with no drama. I met one PI in my life. He was a disgraced former police officer who was caught years earlier outside of his ex-wife's house with gloves and a knife in his car. Nice. During that time I was around him, he was working for my friend's mother, who was very wealthy. He claimed to be running security for her properties, but he was clearly conning her out of a lot of money and property. If anything, I was thinking about calling the cops on him, but never did. She was just as corrupt as he was. I'm very glad I don't associate with any of those people anymore. Following a guy just released from local about 4 hours earlier. Pretty sure he already had a drug deal scheduled and the small town PD just needed me to watch him. He picked up his old girlfriend, went to a convenience store, and proceeded to try to rob it. His girlfriend freaked out, ran to his car, and drove off, leaving him alone inside with the cashier. I called the sheriff, and then went in and held the guy at gunpoint until the sheriff and a deputy arrived. Guy said he needed the cash for the drug deal, which was stupid since the store had about $30 in the register. We got him to flip on his meat and ended up bagging the out-of-town dealer as well. Criminals really are stupider than you can imagine. I've only ever had the police called on me. It's not like it's in the movies. We almost never observe anything even approaching a crime, let alone something we should call the police for. My dad had a bailiff, collection agency, PI business. Most of the work that he did was skip tracing, cheating spouse, insurance fraud. I was 16, and he had me do a stakeout. The lady came out of her door and waved at me, and then gave me the finger. I sucked at it, obviously. Once my dad had me go to this guy's house in the middle of nowhere to see if he was faking an injury. I knocked on the door, and he said he was coming. He took about 3 minutes to get to the door, and he was really visibly injured. I was supposed to ask if insert guy's name here was home because I had no reason to be there. Then I was supposed to apologize because I was looking for a friend with the same name but my age. I felt awful. The insurance company paid out really quickly. Good. Mine is a really twisted, weird case. Getting a burger with a workmate during our lunch hour, I spotted, seated inside, a guy I played soccer with now and again, around a table with some shifty-looking Arabic guys of the same age. I merely nodded in recognition to him and waited in line with my mate for a meal. My wandering gaze, looking out of the store window, spotted a shop over the road, closed down, with distemper paint daubed over the windows indicating its closure. But, hiding inside the shop, I saw people I knew from my business to be plainclothed police officers scoping out us in the burger shop. Opposite, I turned to the table guy I knew and I said quietly, indicating with my eyes, "What you been up to, Azif?" To police I know opposite, I think, are watching this place. Joking, really. I assumed it was merely because he was a regular weed smoker. He and his mates split up and quietly left the shop in different directions while we then sat and ate our food. Some months later, I read in the local paper the police wanted him extradited from Turkey for the murder of 2 elderly women who had distributed him stealing from their homes. DNA evidence. I couldn't believe it. Not that smiling nice Azif we all knew from soccer. Now, I don't know what extradition laws or agreements the UK has with Turkey regarding these type of incidents, but they kept him over there in prison, and not long after, I read in the same newspaper that he was begging to be sent back to the UK because prisons in Turkey are hell. Relatives have to pay for the smallest so-called luxuries, even straw pallets to lie on, decent food, etc. I don't know what happened after that, but I've always wondered if my flippant act of tipping him off enabled him to do a runner back home to his family abroad, because the police had enough evidence and arrested him. Worse still, he had murdered the 2 old girls after my tip-off. Because the incident in the shop, I simply cannot recall exactly. I wish I could, I've tried. I will never know. I guess it's obviously not something I would talk to anybody. I've been doing a lot of consulting work as a private investigator, working side by side with the San Francisco Police Department. It's great work for me as it distracts me from the loss of my wonderful wife, Trudy. I've been searching for her killer for years, but to no avail so far. I have a lot of tics and phobias, especially of milk, and thankfully I have an assistant, Natalie, to help me get through each day. I've called the police on multiple cases, almost too many to count. Many people call me the best detective in San Francisco, so hopefully I'll be back on the force soon enough. Good day. I need a wipe. I see what you did there.